This week, we're going to tackle the question of why I exist. Well, not as a person, that's still to be determined, but as an advisor. What's the value of working with someone like me anyway? Stay tuned. So this week, we're going to tackle the question that we get asked, understandably so, all the time. Why should I work with you? What's the value of working with an advisor, period? I should start by saying I think one of the biggest reasons this question gets asked is all the bad advisors and brokers that happen to exist. I've often said my greatest competition aren't the people who are doing it well or right. It's all the people who give our industry a bad name. And of course, history is replete with a lot of stories and personal experiences, everything from neglect to outright theft. Let's bring it back down into some best practices. I'm going to touch on 5 points today. Of course, self-serving as it would be, I could wax on this for a long period of time, but we're going to tackle 5 big concepts. Happy to talk with any of you anytime about one of them in greater specifics. Number 1 is the actual calculated benefit of working with an advisor. So if you go to the commentary this week, there's links for much of what I'm going to share today. Vanguard did a great study. I know they're often thought of as the do-it-yourself approach on the benefits of working with an advisor. And what they found is over time, working with an advisor can add about 3% a year to your portfolio. Now, before you think that means you're going to have 3% better return because of some market timing genius, what they're really getting at are things like asset allocation, proper rebalancing, tax mitigation strategies, spending strategies, all the kind of nitty-gritty things that aren't super sexy. They certainly aren't going to be talked about on the news, but are actually critical things that you can control to help improve your performance. Second are conflicts of interest. This can certainly be things like high price commissions that someone might force upon you or trick you into getting. It could be something like the lawsuit that's out right now around robo-advisors and the conflicts of interest that exist within so many of them trying to push you into outsized cash position where they make a lot more money on you than they do in other places. Or it could just be the internal conflict of interest. This is one I don't see talked about a lot. I can't tell you how many times I sit down with someone who's been doing it themselves for a while, and they say, you know what, if I'm honest, I don't have a great process for how I pick what I pick. I've been too aggressive at times, too conservative at times, sitting on tons of cash. Hear that almost daily. Why? Well, ultimately, you've got no one else to work with. You've got no one else to blame. You have no partners in process around you. And so that paralysis by analysis kicks in a way that can be quite profound. And what's the cost of that? For most people, I think if you look much, much higher than working with an advisor. Point number 3 is experience. Hope we can bring some experience. It's a little bit of those things that we talked about up above with the Vanguard values of an advisor, but it's also keeping you focused on the right thing. In the commentary this week, we cited to a couple commentaries we did back in August, but do we have the proper perspective? Do we have the right understanding of history? Right now, everybody's focused on politics, the debt ceiling, the budget, possible tax increases, and it gets people very emotional one way or another. Number 1, emotions aren't going to help you, but number 2, you're not focused on the right things. We talk about this at length in the written part, but let's talk about credit spreads and high yield bonds. Said nobody ever, and yet you probably ought to be watching that. If you did, you'd see credit spreads aren't moving. High yield bonds are barely moving. If this was going to be a prolonged risk-off event for stocks, you'd likely see some rattling within those sectors, and you're not. Global dividends, corporate profits continue to go up. Sign again of healthy corporate governance. So again, remember that the media is out to just get clicks. They're not out to help you and your family get to your goals. And that's, again, the kind of thing, those proper anchors, those proper perspectives that a knowledgeable advisor can help with. Last point I want to make is really kind of to the behavioral finance part, as well as just some hard truths. So MIT Age Lab actually just came out with a study this week, and I'm going to quote this. They were looking at what investors did well, did not do well, tend to panic, and this is what they said. Investors who were male over the age of 45, married, and consider themselves having excellent investment experience are more likely to freak out and dump their portfolio during a downturn. I know I'm talking to a lot of you out there. I'm not trying to pick on you, and I'm not saying I would be any different. I've gotten the question, hey, you're a human, you're prone to emotion. Thank you. Some of my family might disagree with that. But yes, how do we do that? Well, it's internal partners, it's external partners, it's creating a process, a discipline. It's also the fact that if I trade anything, I don't get to do it in the privacy of my own home in my basement where nobody but me or maybe my wife, if I confess it, knows what I've done. The second I do it, all my partners, all of our clients know instantaneously, and I have to account to that for a very long time to come. All of those things help to, again, bring the right process and accountability to hopefully help you avoid making emotional decisions. And that's really what we're talking about, is just being one of those partners to you. Lastly, this is a horrible note to end on, so I'll try to come up with something good in the closing, is cognitive impairment and death. I know nobody wants to think about these things. We've had these issues come up a lot over the years, a lot here really even over the last 12 months. Studies have been done that show after the age of 70, about 2/3 of Americans are suffering some form of cognitive impairment. And so maybe you are capable. Maybe you do keep your emotions in check. Maybe you do have a lot of experience. But what happens if you start to slip? Who's going to be there to be a check for you to make sure that you're still on the right page? If you're working with an advisor who really doesn't have a team around them and they're over 70, what's going to happen if they start making a slip? The other thing I'd say is, having done hundreds and hundreds of our cornerstone conversations, the non-CFO spouse, the spouse who's less interested in all of this, one of the cards that normally comes out is preparing for the unexpected. When you ask them, what do you mean by that? They talk about, well, you know, my spouse has done such a great job helping us in this, but what happens if anything happens to them? What's going to happen to me? Not only helping them address that before anyone's inevitable passing, but in all the days you get to enjoy with them before then, give them that gift of knowing, hey, this is under control. We have a partner who's going to be there for our family to make sure we get through these. These are the kinds of things that a firm, hopefully like 10 Capital, can provide for you. It's why we spend so much time building relationships, putting out commentaries like this, is to earn your trust and earn the right to be a valued partner. For those of you who are a client, thank you. For those of you who are interested and would want to learn more, reach out anytime. Thanks so much.